Welcome, friends. We're excited to see a bunch of you joining this morning. Please use the Q&A and tell us where you're joining from, your class name, and where you're joining us from. That would be awesome to know. We will get started here in about a minute. All right, good morning, you guys. Thanks so much for joining us for this cranberry virtual field trip. We are so excited. I'm just looking through our Q&A and we have people joining us from Waukee, Iowa, Mrs. Ruin's fifth graders from Lanesboro, Minnesota, Indiana folks, Aiken, Minnesota, Rippleside Elementary. We're excited to have you here. Rio, Wisconsin, fourth graders, Mrs. Bush's fourth grade class from Mineral Point, Wisconsin, Greenfield, Wisconsin, some students from there, Bose Elementary in Kenosha, welcome. Third and fourth graders from Our Saviors in Crookston, Minnesota. Gosh, and so many more. Winnie Mac fourth graders, AFSA K through 12, second graders in Little Canada, Minnesota. The fourth graders from Minnesota Virtual Academy, Mrs. Allman's class. We're excited to have you. Central Oaks Academy in Wisconsin Rapids is joining us, as well as many others. So I will maybe have a chance to give some more shout outs, but we are excited. This is our first ever virtual field trip where we are collaborating 2 states together. So I'm Sue Knott. I'm an education specialist with Minnesota Ag in the Classroom. And we have our friends with Wisconsin Agriculture in the Classroom that are the real stars of the show today because they have cranberry farms in Wisconsin, which we do not have in Minnesota. So like I said, my name is Sue, my coworker, and I'm here in near St. Paul, Minnesota. My colleague with Minnesota Agriculture in the Classroom, Carrie, is the one doing the technology. And then we have Beth and Ashley from Wisconsin Agriculture in the Classroom, and Heidi, who is our cranberry farmer, who you will meet in just a moment. So we want to remind teachers and classrooms joining us that we love your questions. So use the Q&A if you're joining us in Zoom to put your questions, and please say, if there's a particular student or classroom that's asking so we can recognize you. And if you're joining us in YouTube, which I see Ms. Zitzo's class from East Grand Forks, Ms. Taylor's from Odyssey Academy, as well as a few others. If you're joining us on YouTube, use the comment section and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Okay, so without further ado, I want to introduce you to Heidi Slinkman. She is joining us in Wisconsin Rapids at Gaynor Cranberry Farm. So I'm going to turn it over to Heidi to tell us about herself and her farm. Welcome, Heidi. Oh, hold on one second. Heidi.
Okay, try again.
Can you hear me now? All right, let's try that over. Hello, welcome to Gaynor Cranberry Company. And welcome to my family farm. My name is Heidi Slinkman. Now you may be wondering, how did we get the name Gaynor Cranberry Company? Well, it was given the name in 1876. That means we're nearly 150 years old, when 2 Irish immigrant brothers came here with their families because they had heard about all the abundant cranberries that were growing naturally and natively in Wisconsin. So they took a gamble, they took a risk, and it worked out. They were eager to learn, they were ambitious, and 25 years later, they were still farming. So at that point, a woman by the name of Caroline was bringing her children here on this highway. She would walk from her house to this farm, and she had 2 children. and they would work on the farm with her. Well, one of her children was my great-grandfather, Charles Dempsey, who eventually became the manager and then eventually started to buy stock into the company. So that's how I became a generational farmer. So I work with my sister. We work with our dad. My dad worked with his dad, Grandpa Gordy. He worked with his dad, Great-Grandpa Charles, who worked with his mom, who worked with the Gaynor brothers. So that's how we all came together 150 years later to grow these beautiful cranberries that we're going to talk about today. The important thing that we really want you to walk away with, though, is really understanding cranberry farming. So it ends at harvest, but it begins in the cranberry growth season. So I printed off and laminated this really great illustration by Ann Kurz Chambers. And she has the best botanical illustration of how cranberries grow. And this is how we farm. First, we want to make sure that we see the flowers. Then we want to make sure we have bees that will pollinate the flowers. So without flowers, without bees, we don't have cranberries. Now these flowers I'm showing you right now because we want you to know that they were named by the early pioneers and the early settlers that came to our area. And they thought that these looked like the heads of sandhill cranes that often live on cranberry marshes. So it went from cranberry to cranberry. So let's take a look and see how they grow down here. Water, wet, it's dry, and they grow in sandy soils. See, it's pretty dark. And it's not really sandy on the top, but if you keep digging lower, there's sand down there. And below sand, there's other layers of soil that we want to make sure offers the right filtration for our cranberries. They only want to drink as much as they're able, and then the rest they want to get rid of. So we actually have drain tile in our cranberry beds. We call these cranberry beds to remove the water that's not necessary. And if you see this irrigation pipe right here, we have above ground sprinklers. Some people have below ground sprinklers, but ours are above ground. And these are lifesavers for cranberries because we want to protect the cranberries and we also want to protect the growth for next year. See, it's right on the very top. There we go. So what does that mean with sprinklers? Well, when they're thirsty, we turn the sprinklers on and we give them water. And when it's cold out, we will also run the sprinklers to make sure that the moving water creates the friction and the friction creates the heat and the heat keeps them warm from freezing. So let's look at how they grow. Well, they grow on a vine. So they grow along the ground, kind of like a strawberry, but they grow on an upright, almost like a grape. And our job is to create enough cranberries for them to have multiple cranberries on one upright. So this one's not the greatest. Let's look over here. Here's another one. Ooh, this one's pretty. That one has 3. So then you can see, oh, there was a flower that didn't get pollinated. Here's another one. So we use science and we work with scientists to help us understand the vitality of our vines throughout the growing season. But the important part that I really want to show you, and this is the exciting part, is what's inside a cranberry. So they're highly nutrient for your body from head to toe, but they're also hollow on the inside. They have 4 hollow pockets, just like your heart. And what happens when you have air inside a hollow pocket? It creates buoyancy, and buoyancy creates floating cranberries. So the early pioneers came out and picked like Carolyn did. And then they went from a hand rake. And then they invented walk behind pickers. And now we're going to walk over and take a look at a modern day picker. It's called the Harrow. So follow me.
Heidi, we have a couple questions already, which is exciting. So Jamie is wondering, what is the growing season for cranberries?
That's a really great question. Cranberries grow from spring to fall. And so really they go to sleep in the winter. And so that's why it's really fun to call them cranberries that grow in beds, because they're sleeping beauties that need their rest. And I really want to highlight that the reason they need their sleep is because they need about 62 days of cold weather for that rest. That's why they're only grown in Massachusetts, New Jersey, Wisconsin, Washington, Oregon, then up in Canada. We have British Columbia, Nova Scotia, and Quebec. I think I got that. I got Quebec and Nova Scotia mixed up. But anyway, so in that northern climate, they also grow in Chile. So they need to be able to go to sleep. So once they wake up, then we harvest them between September and October.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, you hop in your truck. I'll keep asking you questions. So Mrs. Slade's class, who's in the Minnesota Valley or Minnesota Virtual Academy, they're wondering what kind of boots you're wearing and why you're wearing them.
They are called hip boots, and otherwise they're also called known as waders. And you're going to see why we have to wear these boots in a little bit. So as you can see, we are in a dry bed, but I'm going to turn my truck on, and Beth's going to show you there's a flood ditch right outside of her window, and there's a culvert where the water is coming from. And that is how we move our water around, is through flood ditches and the movement of water through culverts.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to ask a few more questions. Miss Tritton's class, I hope I said her name correctly, is wondering if animals ever come and eat the cranberries off the vines.
Yes, animals definitely come into the beds. We have sometimes we have deer if you live really close to the forest. And so sometimes farmers will put deer fences up. Now, we also, remember I had talked about pollination? Well, we have to hire beehives from a beekeeper. And depending on where you store your beehives, if they're close to the forest, it sometimes draws the bear's attention. So sometimes those beehives have to be encased around a fence so that they can protect them from getting attacked by the bear. We also have a lot of wildlife here. So go around here and all kinds of living creatures. We'll talk more about how we draw between this bed and the next one, but what I was able to show you right now is where we are going to be picking the berries with a machine. So I'm just going to drive down the road and show you what we see. So the first thing is we have a crew that takes the pipe of and it's critical to understand that water is really important to us.
Okay, we're gonna hang on for just a minute.
Once we know.
Heidi, we are losing audio a little bit, so I think let's show the video, Carrie, that we have, and then we'll hopefully have audio better after that.
Okay.
So this is a video. It's called the Harrow that's harvesting cranberries that I think you guys heard that Heidi mentioned how cranberries float. So this is, you can see the cranberries floating on the water, and this is the machine, the harrow, the tractor with the harrow that's collecting them. So we're going to see that hopefully in just a moment if we get our audio connections working a little bit better. So Carrie, do we want to try Heidi again?
Yes, I think we do. And actually I'm going to have Heidi log out and come back, because they're having a little bit of a signal problem. So Sue, we're going to show a video, the aerial view of what their farm looks like.
Perfect.
Because it's very cool looking. Let me pull that up for us, because their farm is much bigger than I think most of us would expect.
Yes, and I think, yep, and we'll see that they're divided into these long, thin beds. So Heidi was standing at the very beginning in one of their beds, but as you can see, there's, gosh, I don't know, we'll have to ask her once she's back how many total beds there are. And then you can see the water in between in those ditches that she was talking about, and how there's culverts that they use to manage and have that water flow. So you can see this is an aerial shot or view of their farm done with a drone, and you can see the water there too, like Heidi said, was really important to cranberry farmers. And I think at the very beginning, or you can kind of see the roads, which look really small. So this is a very large cranberry farm. And Heidi, I know that we were planning to mention this, but she and some other cranberry farmers have an organization called Cranberry Learning Incorporated. So you can do a quick Google search, teachers or students, to Cranberry Learning Inc. INC, and find some really fantastic resources, as well as Minnesota and Wisconsin Agriculture in the Classroom are great resources to use too. So it looks like Heidi is back. And there we go. This is real life. We showed you a video, but this is the real life harvesting of cranberries. So Heidi, can you talk once? Let's see if we can hear you.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, you sound great. Tell us what we're seeing.
Excellent. Okay, what we're looking at is Justin, our driver, driving the Harrow, which is the machine is not, the Harrow is not the tractor, it's the instruments that are attached to the front and the back of the Harrow, or excuse me, of the tractor. And those instruments that are attached are metal, basically teeth or combs, if you will. And as he's driving, those combs on the front and the back are gently combing through the vines. And as they comb through the vines, they pop the berries right off their vines.
Wow.
And once they pop
awesome.
off the vines, then they will naturally float. And as we raise the water using the culverts in the ditch system is how we get the water in the bed and out of the beds. So I think we've really gotten some great footage on our floating berries and how we pluck them or pick them. But I think now is a good time to head over to where we pick them up and get them into the truck. What do you guys think?
I think that sounds like a great idea. And we had a ton of questions, Heidi. So I'm going to try to ask you a few of them. Fourth graders from Miss Doyle's class in Mineral Point are wondering how many beds does Heidi have on her cranberry farm, and how many acres of cranberries are grown?
Excellent question. We do know the number of beds because we analyze each bed and all of their cranberry science. So we have 80 beds over the course of 212 acres. And it's very common in Wisconsin to have support land that's a part of your farm. So it's equivalent to 1 acre of cranberry vines or beds that you see behind me equals to 6 acres of support land. So what is support land? Well, support land is where all of the woodland animals live, and which means we have forest land, we have reservoirs, and we have wetlands. So we're not only farmers, we're actually land conservationists too.
Okay, here's another question, Heidi. Caleb from Hilltop Elementary in Rice Lake, Wisconsin, wants to know if the cranberry plants die in the winter.
They do not die. In fact, we'll see what they look like when they go to sleep. We're going to get out of my truck and we're going to head over to where the pickup crew is. And as we walk, we're going to highlight a bed that was harvested earlier. And they harvest at different times depending on their blossom season and their readiness. So as you can see behind me, this bed, 2 reasons why I already know it was harvested. Do you see how brown and burgundy the vines are? So and you can actually see this right in action. This is so exciting. They're green on the bottom, but they're they work so hard.
Heidi, we lost your audio
They
again.
work
I'm
so
not sure.
in the season.
There we go. You're back. We can hear you now.
All right. Excellent. So they're starting to go to sleep. They work so hard during the season that they need to take a rest. So it's just like a tree, actually. Think of it like that too. They drop their leaves in the fall and they might look dead in the winter, but then they spruce right back up in the spring, don't they? All right, well, follow me. And we're gonna head over now. Hopefully the wind's okay and hopefully the sound's okay. We'll just keep trying.
Right.
On our farm, we deliver our cranberries in dump trucks. Now, some people have the capacity to deliver in semis. But what really matters is that we have really valuable crew members that know how to drive dump truck or big heavy equipment. There's a lot of value inside these trucks. So let's talk about the value. We measure our cranberries by barrels. So 1 barrel is 100 pounds. So every time they take the truck and they deliver it, we then break down the math to try to figure out how many barrels an acre each bed is producing. And in Wisconsin, the average bed will be around 250 barrels an acre. However, we invest in ourselves and we invest in technology and we invest into the future. And we know the future means that we have to grow more cranberries because the world wants more cranberries. And so if we can't grow out, we have to grow up, which means we need vines that produce more berries per acre or per barrel, excuse me. So what we're trying to do is grow from 250 barrels an acre, maybe to 400 barrels an acre, maybe 600 barrels an acre. So we actually have scientists that are helping us figure that out with the breeding of cranberry vines. But let's go take a look.
So Heidi, there's some math questions or numbers questions that some students have been curious about. They're wondering how many cranberries fit in one of those trucks, and also like how many cranberries do you like harvest in a year? Oh, it looks like we might have lost Heidi for a moment here. I don't know. It was really windy. I don't know if you guys could tell, but Wisconsin Rapids is very windy today. It's windy here in Minnesota too. So we might have lost her just for a second. So thank you guys for putting all of those awesome questions in the Q&A in the chat. I don't know if we'll have a chance, but it looks like Heidi's getting her hip boots ready to go. And I think we're seeing, hopefully, yep, there we go. You guys are seeing how they're collecting these cranberries. So Heidi, can you tell us what's going on?
Can you repeat that question one more time?
Yeah, what are we seeing? What's going on?
All right. Well, this is where the action happens, everybody. This is like Super Bowl weekend for us every single day. This is where we get to see all of our hard work and all the fruit get pumped into the through up this berry pump and then into our truck. So let's go down and take a look and see what it feels like and looks like to be inside a cranberry bed. So one of the questions we often get asked is, how much water's in there? Well, I say it's thigh high. Okay, so Beth's coming down. She's never been in a cranberry bed before, so I'm gonna offer her my hand just in case.
Yeah, Beth, don't fall in the water. We don't want anyone swimming today.
Yep,
it looks kind of chilly.
Because you don't want those vines to trip you on your feet. Now this thing is right here is a stake, and it's staking down a mat underneath, and you might be able to see the mat in the water.
We can see it, yes.
Excellent. So we learn from growers. Growers learn from growers, and we learn from each other. We work together and we collaborate, and we learn from other growers that this mat helps collect the debris, like the floating leaves that are in the water. Those don't sell in the market. Nobody wants to buy your leaves, so we want to make sure those leaves stay behind. So that's what that tool is for. But then we'll carefully walk inside the bed.
So that's where these hip boots come in very valuable, right? Your clothes are staying dry.
Yep.
But yeah, okay. So now we're looking at those cranberries, and there's been a bunch of questions. Are cranberries always red? And it looks like they're not. So can you tell us about the color?
All right. Say that again, guys.
We had questions about the color of cranberries.
Okay, so the color of cranberries is a variety of different colors. Let's take a look and get out of these guys' way here. So let's take a look. So they come in different colors. They have different colors of red depending on the vine variety that they have and how much sun exposure they have had. So this is a good example that all berries are not red when they're harvested. So this must have been at the bottom of the canopy. And these are the leaves. And then if I put my arm down in here, look at how thick these berries are. So that's 6 inches deep. That's a lot of cranberries. So they're corralled using a cranberry boom, a floating boom. So we have a team that corrals our berries together using 2 tractors. And then they meet and they hook up and they create a circle. So once they're circled, and how do we know what end of the bed? Like, how come not that end of the bed? Well, we always say Mother Nature always wins. So she blew the cranberries down this way. So we knew this is where they would be corralled. So we corral them up, and then if you look down the dike, there's a yellow tractor all the way down, and attached to his tractor is that black floating cranberry boom. So essentially, he's pulling the boom towards himself, creating a taut circle. So the circle that these cranberries are in gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And as it gets smaller, it's creating movement and pressure towards the berry pump. So as Beth and I stand here, we can feel the movement of the ocean of cranberries that are getting naturally kind of pulled in this direction.
Oh, right. That is
just
quite
try to
the
make
sight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. So we have, Heidi, a bunch of questions about what your cranberries are used for. So are they for juice or sauces, or do you just eat them raw? And people are curious what they taste like raw and if you like to eat them just right off the vine.
I love eating them off the vine. I'll eat one right now. We use the word tart. So like a Sour Patch Kid, that's tart. Let's take a bite. It's a little bit of a pucker. Can you hear me chomp? They're so tasty. Okay, except for leaves.
Leaves aren't good.
No, so our cranberries go to Ocean Spray. So we are part of the Ocean Spray Co-op. And Ocean Spray says your cranberries make really good cranberries for craisins and for juice. So that's where our cranberries go.
Awesome. So juice and we had a class from 4th grade at King of Grace Lutheran School in Golden Valley. They tried craisins, and I think you guys, some of your cranberries go to craisins. They also tried cranberry juice, but they said they couldn't find fresh cranberries in Minnesota yet. Why do you think that is true?
Well, the reason you have not found fresh cranberries quite yet in Minnesota is because we just started harvesting about a week ago. So the process is you lift them out of the bed, they get elevated out of the bed and into the dump truck. Then they go to your handler. Ours is Ocean Spray. Then your handler will sort out the berries because they want the red berries for craisins, the big ones for craisins, or their sweet dried cranberries. They'll save the white ones for like a white juice or something like that. Once they have them binned up and how they want them stored, they go into a freezer. Then once they're in the freezer, they will go into a box or a bagger for the grocery store. So that takes time. You know, I was just at my neighbor's marsh this week, and he was bagging up fresh cranberries. So I would say maybe by next week, you should see them there.
Okay, awesome. We also, Heidi, have a bunch of questions about planting cranberries. So for example, Rylan from Watertown Mayer Elementary is wondering how long it takes to plant all the cranberries. Now, tell us about how cranberries grow, because you don't have to plant them every year.
That's right. So that they're considered a perennial vine, so they come back every year. But we choose to renovate or replace the old vines. They could be as old as 100 years old with the newer vines. So the newer vines produce more berries. And so what we do is we will eliminate all of the old vines, and we'll study the soil profile and make sure it's all perfect and all level. And then we will get vines that we've bought from someone or mowed ourselves. And think of like a hay bale, and you know how it's like a cube, a rectangular cube? Our cranberry vines are sold to us like that. And we put it into a machine, and then they spit out the vines, like in all little sizes. And then we have to unclump them with the pitchfork and make sure it's all nice and even. And then a machine comes through and they disc them in like circle discs, like a Frisbee, but it's on a rod. And so they'll disc them into the ground. And then, you know, think of like your grandma's rolling pin. We have like a roller that goes across and compacts them down. And believe it or not, because they're a vine, they root themselves. Isn't that amazing? So once they root themselves, then they start growing the uprights. And 3 years later, we can harvest the crop for the market. They'll start showing some fruit 1 or 2 years in, but they're baby vines. So they're not like super producers yet. So we just let them grow.
Awesome. Thanks for describing that.
Question.
Yeah, thanks for describing that process. So we've had a couple students curious about the machine behind you that's in between the two trucks. So it looks like things are going up little elevators. Could you tell us what that's called?
Yes, this is called a berry pump. And this is a high investment piece of equipment for harvest. It's only used for harvest. And someone figured out that we could be more efficient. Like it costs us less time and labor and less time, you know, physically to get the berries out if we pumped them out. So in the carousel, they're down in the circle. We can get up close so Beth can see it. It's sucking, and there's a mat underneath. It's sucking the berries, and there's a square, like you can almost see the square in the center. Watch out for the carousel, and it's drawing the cranberries in, and it's sucking it in. And then once it's sucked in, it takes it right all the way up this tube, and then it goes up to where the American flag is. And once it's inside the American flag area, there we go. There's Tyler, and his job is to make sure that the machine is sorting the cranberries from the leaf debris. So we only get paid for cranberries, not leaves. And so we really want to make sure we're delivering only cranberries. So that's his job. So there's a water store in that machine up there that will help sort the cranberries from the debris. And then the leaf debris goes into the composting truck to the right of the flag. This is the composting truck. And then that goes to our roads and other reasons or other resources that we use compost for.
Wow, that is quite the machine. That looks very awesome, and definitely some science and technology involved there. Heidi, we just have time for a couple more questions. So there's been a number of students who are curious how many people work on the farm. We can see some of your helpers there in the back. Could you tell us how many people work at Gaynor Cranberry Company?
Yep, we have 8 full-time employees, including my family. So I can see my sister over there. And then we add extra crew when we have extra needs for it. So right now, I think our payroll is around 20 people.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, I cannot thank our students enough for all of the fantastic questions. I apologize, we couldn't get to all of them, but there is a couple students who are wondering, and I'm curious about this too, Heidi. What is your favorite thing about being a cranberry farmer?
My favorite thing about being a cranberry farmer is that I get to say that cranberries are our state fruit, that we are a part of a billion-dollar industry here in Wisconsin, that we are providing healthy, whole body health nutrients to people. And I love that I get to work with my family, and I love that I get to work outside. And I love being a part of something that really matters.
Yeah, we can tell. It shows in your voice, and we can't thank you enough for having us and showing us around. And I mentioned this earlier, but teachers, check out Cranberry Learning Inc. Heidi has worked really hard with fellow cranberry farmers to have some awesome resources and ideas and fun activities to do there. And Wisconsin Agriculture in the Classroom and Minnesota Agriculture in the Classroom, we both have websites that have additional pieces and things for you to check out if you want to learn more about cranberries or just agriculture in your state. So thanks again, Heidi. Thanks everybody for joining us. We hope that you learned a little bit and are curious to know more about